Hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to host a high converting virtual summit that leads to your biggest signature offer launch yet. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and a recent episode we did gave me an idea for a topic that I'm really excited to explore. It's definitely going to be something that's more relevant to some of you than others, but I do think everyone can walk away with some important things to consider or just a better understanding of how someone who's different than you might work. But our topic today is hosting a virtual summit as a highly sensitive person, like capital HSP. It's an actual thing if you haven't heard of it before. So that's what today's episode is about. And then the next episode, we're going to take it a little further and talk about hosting summits for a highly sensitive audience. So we'll have two parts here, but we're starting with the host perspective. But a few episodes ago, in episode 284, I interviewed one of our Launch with the Summit Accelerator clients, Stephanie Feld. And one of the topics we talked about was how she is highly sensitive. She came into the accelerator expecting to have to modify a bunch of our strategies because of it, but she actually learned what to do from us instead. And I had never thought about it that way. I had truly never realized that myself being highly sensitive has a huge impact to play on our strategies. And now I can look back through our testimonials from clients and students. It's like, oh my gosh, that is why people love what we do. It's because of my approach. So I'm just really excited to help some of you who are highly sensitive maybe see how you can leverage your sensitivity as a strength, as well as just kind of talking about how that could show up in summits. And then, alongside that, we've had a lot of clients come to us worrying about specific summit strategies they've seen, more specifically as they relate to their audience and as they'll be received by their audience. So there's a lot for us to dig into there as well in the next episode. But today we're going to cover a quick overview of what it means to be a highly sensitive person, or HSP. I feel like some of you just really might have a wake-up call today. I'm kind of excited to hear about it. You can DM me on Instagram if that happens. After that, I will give some examples of how being highly sensitive shows up for me in business and with summits. I think those set examples will be really helpful for some of you. And then we'll go over how you can consider it in your summit hosting strategies. All right, so let's start with what it means to be a highly sensitive person. I'm guessing some of you are listening to this because you saw, highly sensitive in the title, and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sensitive, I'll listen. But, if you find out that you are an HSP, I definitely want to hear about it. And also, as I go through these things, just realize that some of these traits I'm going to talk about are much more related to summits and what we're going to discuss further in this episode than other things. But I kind of want to just give an overview. So if I ever say HSP, if you ever see that anywhere, it's a highly sensitive person. It's also known as sensory processing sensitivity. And here's a definition I found. Those with high levels of sensory processing sensitivity display increased emotional sensitivity, stronger reactivity to both external and internal stimuli like pain, hunger, light, and noise, and a complex inner life, whatever that means. And then I found a list of questions to kind of help you identify if this is you or not. This is from hsperson.com. So I'll just read through these questions. Are you easily overwhelmed by such things as bright lights, strong smells, coarse fabrics, or sirens nearby? Do you get rattled when you have a lot to do in a short amount of time? Do you make a point of avoiding violent movies and TV shows? I totally thought that was just me until I started reading about this. Do you need to withdraw during busy days into bed or a darkened room or some other place where you can have privacy and relief from the situation? Do you make it a high priority to arrange your life to avoid upsetting or overwhelming situations? Do you notice or enjoy delicate or fine scents, tastes, sounds, or works of art? Do you have a rich and complex inner life? When you were a child, did your parents or teachers see you as sensitive or shy? Does anyone else feel seen by these questions? You should totally reach out if you do. But those are just some things that kind of give you an idea of what it means to be a highly sensitive person. You would answer yes to most of those if this describes you. But there are some of those that are more relevant to what we're talking about today, or at least the way it shows up for me, right? And that is getting rattled when you have a lot to do, needing to withdraw during busy days, arranging your life to avoid upsetting or overwhelming situations. And then something I saw on a different site was being deeply sensitive to criticism and negative feedback. That definitely shows up for me. So that's kind of an overview of what it means to be an HSP. I want to give you some more tangible examples about how that shows up for me in business and in summits. I'm going to start with the not so good side. And I truly think there are both. There are parts of this that makes, life in general, but specifically running a business more difficult. but also like it's also a superpower. Absolutely. But I'll start with the not so good side. So the first way this shows up for me in a negative standpoint is just how much the thoughts and words and perceptions of other people truly impact me. God forbid, I see even a slightly negative comment somewhere. Oh my goodness. My anxiety's through the roof and I'm done, I'm worthless for the day, And it's so silly, even though the logical part of my brain can be like, that does not matter. What they just said does not matter. Like, I can't, right? Like, it really does matter. And then, like, also what is unsaid really bothers me a lot, or what I think they'll say or think. Oh my gosh, what is my audience going to think if I send this email, even though I'm really trying to serve them and I really think they're going to like it? What if they don't? What if they think I'm the worst? Like, oh my gosh, it's ridiculous, right? So the way I like process what other people think of me can definitely make things difficult. Another thing that shows up and just makes running a business harder is my reaction during launches and things. Like if sales aren't immediately rolling in during a launch, I absolutely spiral, like immediately. I also very recently, like 2 weeks ago, as of recording this, published like one of our mini episodes about the second week slump, I think is what I called it. And I think this is part of it. Like, I don't know what people are thinking, things aren't coming in as quickly as I'd like them to. And it just affects me much more than it should, even though this is how it works. And I know that. I know the middle of any launch is going to be quiet. It still gets to me, and I have a reaction about it. I also like worry over sending multiple emails during cart close, even though I absolutely know some people need it, right? Just being really worried about the people who don't like that, even though in every single email, I'm like, hey, if you don't want to hear anymore during this enrollment period, click here. Like it still bothers me, I'm just worrying what those people think. In the earlier days of business, I was also held back a lot. So like there was a part, I read about just kind of arranging your life to avoid upsetting or overwhelming situations. So in my earlier days in business, that definitely had an impact on me. I was more hesitant to try new things. It's part of, looking back now, I can see that's part of why I put off summits for so long. And even now, I think it's why I sometimes hesitate on things, because I'm trying to avoid any kind of overwhelming, uncomfortable, painful situation, whatever that is. So I used to let it dictate my decisions more. I think now just the experience of business has helped me. Like now I generally know how to judge if something's going to work or not. So, taking action is safer at this point. But yeah, it definitely held me back before. I can freeze when there's too much to do. So that definitely has an impact. And then I absolutely cannot work with background noise or distractions. Like I homeschool my daughter. So I have a babysitter come in from like 1 to 4 during the day. Homeschool only takes a couple hours. So we have a bunch of time where technically I could work while my kids are playing, but it's just not a good thing to do. Like I can't work with background noise. I can't listen to music or podcasts or anything like that. I need complete silence. So that's another place that shows up. So that's what I would say are like the more negative sides of how it shows up for me. But I've also adapted like pretty much all of these things. And I'll kind of talk through these in case it's helpful for some of you. So as for the way I deal with thoughts, words, and perceptions of others, basically I deal with it by not dealing with it. So Kate is my shield. She knows she's my shield. I've described her as that from the very beginning. I do not look at emails or survey responses or anything like that before a team member goes through it. If I see there's a comment on one of our Facebook ads, I do not look at it, It used to truly leave me sick to my stomach every single day thinking about going into the inbox. Like I would have a physical reaction of anxiety, even though most days it was totally fine. You never know if there's going to be that one slightly cranky email, and that's all it took. So now I just don't do it. I never go in the inbox. We have like a inbox channel in Slack where if there's something that needs my attention, Kate will put it in there and I'll usually just respond right back in there. She'll copy and paste my response to the email. So like my adaptation is that I don't go in the inbox. The only place I will be the first one to look at comments is like in our Facebook group and when people respond on Instagram. But I even don't like that. And if comments were more negative there, I like that would have to change as well. It's just that they tend to be positive in those places. And then like if there's ever feedback I need to know about, like in a survey response or wherever, right? She knows to present it gently. She will like finesse the way it's said and present it to me gently. And even that can be hard, but like she is my shield. And that's a really important part of keeping my anxiety down and helping me enjoy what I do, having her there to kind of protect me in a way. As for managing my reactions during launches, like my team knows, they learned very quickly that I spiral, and they've gotten really good at jumping in to pump me up. So that's really nice. I have unlimited Voxer access to my mindset coach, which is really helpful. And I've been working with her for years and years, so she knows all my patterns. And I also know I have these cycles now, which helps a lot. So sometimes I don't even need support anymore. I'm like, okay, this is just the middle launch period. I always do this. It's going to be fine. Let's keep going, So I can talk myself through it a lot better now than I used to be able to. And then, like I said before, in the earlier days, I was held back by worrying about what other people would think. And I think with this, I've just made little steps at a time. Like I've gotten more comfortable sending emails, right? Like I used to think, oh my gosh, you could not send more than 1 email per week. Okay, let's try sending 2. Are people mad? And now I'll send as many as I want. And I don't see the responses in the inbox, so maybe people don't like it, but I've started just kind of stair-stepping my comfort levels with things like that. I've gotten a little more comfortable adding like a fair amount of urgency to things. Being more confident in my offers and the transformations I have can, also helps. But on the flip side of that, if I get even the slightest negative feedback or constructive feedback from someone, it makes me spiral. I have hundreds and hundreds of testimonials I can look at. But if there's like one person in a quarter who is not super thrilled, that will honestly throw me for a bit. But just like learning over time to own what I do and own my offers has definitely helped me from being held back by what other people think. Also, like as far as being frozen when there's too much to do, I always have too much to do. I am full of ideas. I only have a few hours per day to work, so I can never keep caught up. So something I have started doing is my life is mapped out in Asana. I actually did a walkthrough in March of like what our Asana setup looks like. If you did not see that, you can go to our YouTube channel and just search Asana and you'll see a video of it on there. But what I'll do each day is go into Asana and pull out just the few most important tasks for the day. And I put it into this beautiful, cute Notion dashboard that I got from Xanthi Appleyard. It's called Leisure Ethic if you want to go grab it. But I'll just put things in there. And then all I see are the most important tasks for the day. If I finish those and have more time to go check off other tasks, I can go into Asana. But that way I'm not seeing everything, so that can definitely help on the days I'm feeling overwhelmed. And then as far as dealing with background noises and distractions, my office is in the basement and I work in silence or sometimes with Brain FM quietly in the background. And Brain FM is great because you can indicate like how much, what do they have it? I have it pulled up on this pad. Low neural effect is my setting. Like if it gets to medium or high, I'm like, oh dudes, I cannot concentrate with this. So the music is like very calm, and that way it helps. Like if the kids are running around crazy upstairs, I'm just hearing this calm music that's like engineered to help you focus. So that's really helpful for me. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, by the way. And then last, I feel like I'm talking about myself too much, but I'm hoping this is like helpful or at the very least interesting. I also want to touch on how this can be a superpower because it truly, truly is. I think that being sensitive and in tune with my audience lets me connect really deeply with them. It is really easy for me to like read between the lines of what they're saying. If they need help with something, I see that. I think that's part of why I have a program where people join. They're like, how did you know I would need all this? There's literally nothing you're missing. I am so sensitive to those kinds of things. I don't miss it, I also really never have to worry about being quote unquote too salesy. Again, my comfort with this has grown over time, but I'm very sensitive to it. To give you an example of this, I had a copywriter write a revised sales page and launch sequence for Summit in a Box lately. And part of that, when it gets to like, here are your options, the last option that presented our program, as the best one was like, the smarter choice is this. I was like, no, it doesn't feel good to me to say smarter choice. I don't want to make them think that if they don't use our offer, I don't think, I'm just so sensitive to that. Most people would just read right past that and not care. But I'm those kinds of things get to me easily. So I think that helps my sales content probably be relatable. I know it still pushes some people a little bit. It still pushes me because I know I have to push myself. But I think our clients and students appreciate that too, that they can trust the material I give them, that it's not going to be like a bro marketing type situation. I also pay attention to very minor details, which again, that's why we have the programs we have. That's why we have a literal step-by-step and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resources you need for hosting a summit, and there's nothing missing. Any minor detail, I got it. There was one of our Summit in a Box students literally recorded a video of like, I don't know how many, like 20 things he loved about the program, and then asked me to come and do a a talk about the program at his summit. And I was talking about it. He's like, no, you're underselling this. Go to your speaker pitch template. And he had me pull it up. He's like, look at this. She doesn't just have a template. She has one template for if your audience knows about summits, one for if it doesn't. They have all these follow-up templates for whether they do or don't respond. There's this template you can use to send them on social media to check in a voice message between your pitches. And they have this template for if they send you a presentation that you don't love. It's like, he was just so impressed with all these things. I was like, oh, that's just how my brain works, right? I just go to the details. And that's like definitely a superpower when it comes to helping people host events as nuanced as summits. A couple more here. I also think being highly sensitive makes me a leader who listens and cares and prioritizes my team and their feelings over anything else. We have worked really closely with some other big teams in the space, and I'm honestly appalled at the way they talk to and treat their team members. Like truly purposely making them feel bad, it looks like, and then not caring. I will correct my team, but never in a way that makes them feel bad, because I cannot do that. I can't do it. We've had mistakes from team members that have lost me, thousands of dollars before. I would much rather eat that, use it as a training experience, and let them know they are still appreciated and loved than make them feel worse than they already do. Anyways, it's part of what makes me a good team leader and why my employees never leave. I've never had an employee quit because we just have a great work environment because of that, I think. Knock on wood. And then finally, it makes me a really great summit coach. And again, I can look back and see that this is why my approach feels so much better than so many other summit programs out there. We hear this time and time again, like, oh my gosh, I started over here, then I came to your program, and this is so much better because X, Y, Z reason. It's why the way I teach summits actually adds value to attendees because I care deeply about that. It's why my summits feel good to speakers. It's why they feel good to other sensitive summit hosts. I also don't downplay it when my audience feels like something needs to be done differently for them and their audience. I have been in so many programs where, myself or someone else has, gone to the coach and been like, okay, this is what you say we should do. I'm not loving that because of this XYZ reason. And they just come back and push harder and tell them about how, if they're dedicated, they need to do it. And here's, how you can shift this objection and stuff like that. But I'm different. I'll lovingly encourage sometimes, but I also recognize how important it is to trust those feelings in most circumstances. And that absolutely weaves itself into my coaching and programs and the way I work with our clients. If you're ready to host a high-converting virtual summit to replace your slow-growth marketing strategies and use it to lead into your biggest course launch yet, I've got an exclusive training just for you. This training is for those who are interested in working with me in our Launch with the Summit Accelerator to host a summit that blows industry standards out of the water, uses feel-good engagement-based strategies to create an amazing experience for everyone involved, seamlessly leads into your biggest course launch yet, and sets you up for additional post-summit profits on the back end. Inside the Accelerator, we help our clients consistently host life and business-changing virtual summits, and in the free private training, I'll show you exactly how it works along with all kinds of examples. So apply for an invite to the Launch with the Summit Accelerator and the training at summithosthangout.com/apply. All right, and finally, I want to get to how to account for being highly sensitive in your strategies. If you've been listening to this, if this resonates with you, if you are sensitive or just want to add some sensitivity, if you're not usually, I want to go through some things. I think the most important thing you can do is just listen to your gut, listen to your judgment and the surges of anxiety or whatever that feels like to you. For me, when I'm getting out of alignment, it shows up as anxiety. But whatever that feels like to you, when you're bordering on the edge of what you're comfortable with, you need to listen to that. If a strategy doesn't feel right, who cares what the experts say you need to do? You need to stay in alignment, right? And I'll give some examples of this. So one example is that a lot of summit strategists out there teach that you should require a minimum list size of 5,000 people from your speakers, and or that you should require that they send like 3 emails. That feels so incredibly wrong to me. Like, why am I prioritizing results over these humans? The humans are much more important in why I'm hosting this event in the first place. Like, I just can't. That's not something I'll do, and it's not something I teach. So like, if you ever feel something like that, like, wait, this isn't right, you need to trust that. And there's almost always something you can change about it, right? Something else where it shows up for me, a strategy that doesn't feel right. Some people pretend that their presentations, like for a free summit ticket, expire after 24 hours, but then do a quote unquote surprise second chance over the weekend or something. That feels so out of alignment and integrity to me. And I've talked to people about this before. I just talked about it, in a Q&A at our summit. And everyone else is just like so unbothered by the thought. But I just can't. If I tell them that these presentations are expiring after 24 or 48 hours, I'm not going to plan to be lying about that. Like, that's just not, I can't do that. So again, just listen to when those things aren't feeling right to you. Let's see. I want to keep giving a few more examples here. I've also seen other people launch their offers during summits in a very like loud, in-your-face way that just feels gross to me. Where some people might ignore it, I really tune into that. I tune into those feelings, and that has influenced our launch strategies. So I am not going to overpower or outshine my speakers with trying to launch an offer. Instead, I found ways to complement the event with our launches, and our clients love the approach. Also, another example with my price increase strategy for our All Access Pass. In the early days, we got some feedback early on that some of our timers just weren't long enough. So that was an easy thing for me to choose to adjust and lengthen a bit, right? I also used to have an extra price increase at the end of our summits for our All Access Pass, which felt like it added pressure that just wasn't helpful anyway at that point. Like at that point, I was able to identify that it was just pressure rather than support. And I have some people that still choose to do that, but it doesn't feel good to me. So I removed it, even knowing it might get me, or it might lose me, a handful of sales. Like, that doesn't bother me as much as sending an extra set of cart close emails would. So if something feels off, you need to listen to it. But also, if you're newer to this, I also want you to know when it's time to push yourself. And I think that can be really helpful to have a more experienced, sensitive coach or friend or whatever that looks like, whether it's a summit coach, whether it's a mindset coach, whatever that looks like, or if you're able to just do some self-coaching. Is this out of alignment, or is this something a little new and scary? That's kind of something you have to learn to balance. Something else I would encourage you to do to help you account for being sensitive is having a longer timeline for your summit planning if you need to, at least for the first event when you're not quite sure what to expect, because I don't want you to get stuck in like being frozen with anxiety when you get to that middle period and there's so many moving pieces going on and you feel the registration period approaching and all of that stuff. I don't want that to be something that like leaves you frozen. So maybe you choose to have a longer timeline. I think it would be incredibly helpful for you to have someone else to handle support during your summit, from the time registration opens to the time your cart closes. So you are not in the inbox handling those people, because one thing that's guaranteed with a summit is that those people are going to come. There's going to be mostly great people, but all it takes is one or two of quote unquote those people to like make you doubt everything you're doing, which is so silly, but that's what we do to ourselves, right? So I'd really encourage you to get help, even if it's like someone in your membership who's willing to come on and let you pay them, or like our team does support during these periods. And there's other people out there as well. Have someone to be at least in your inbox so you're not dealing with that, and tell them to come to you gently with any issues. Make sure they know that you're sensitive to these kinds of things. I would also encourage you to plan for some extra feelings around the time where you're pitching speakers. That is like the first part of your event where you're really looking for outside approval, and it can just bring some feelings with it. So it would be a good thing for you to have some space to kind of process and sit with that when you're getting ready to pitch. I would also encourage you not to watch the numbers too closely once registration opens. Like, watch close enough to make sure that things are working, that people can register, that they're getting the right emails, that they can purchase. Make sure the conversion rates are looking good, but don't watch it like a hawk, because if it's not going super, super well from day one, it's going to send you into a spiral and it's not worth it, right? We have other episodes about this, making sure you get results, what to do during your registration period. So I'm not going to go too in depth, but it's not worth watching your numbers every second. And then finally, just like have someone who can support you mindset wise, whether that's a coach, whether that's a friend, team member, family member, me in the accelerator, have someone who can be there to support you through all these things, because like these feelings are real. And like if there's anyone listening to this still, congratulations, who is not highly sensitive. Some of this probably sounds ridiculous. You're like, really? Get over it. But we can't. So you need someone who gets it and isn't just going to like try to bypass these real feelings that you're feeling. So I hope this episode was helpful. I hope it gives you some takeaways. If you're highly sensitive and have not like seen the power of it, haven't been leveraging it, I just hope that this episode encourages you to lean into a little bit. A book I'm reading right now is titled Sensitive. I don't know authors off the top of my head. You can look it up or you can DM me for more information, but it's a really, really great book to learn more about your sensitivity, because I'm just discovering it too. So feel free to DM me on Instagram with any thoughts or questions or takeaways or anything like that. But thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and resources mentioned, head to the link in the episode description wherever you're listening. And in the next episode, we'll be continuing this topic and chatting about virtual summits for highly sensitive audiences. So be sure to tune in for that. Just because you're a sensitive host doesn't mean you have a sensitive audience, and vice versa. So I think that one will be a good listen for anyone regardless. Now go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your high converting virtual summit.